Hey guys, so here's the second part to the 7.7 day 2 notes. Once again, we're going to solve the right triangle. Remember, anytime we're solving a right triangle, meaning that we're solving both for sides and angles, there's going to be three things we need to solve for. So here, notice that we are solving for two angles and one side. So they have given us what we are trying to solve for, and this will be the same in the homework assignment. It will tell you specifically what you're solving for. Okay, so remember, if we are solving for two angles and a side, okay, so we are solving for two angles. This is where we have to use our inverse trig ratios. So this is what you learned in the 7.7 day 1 notes, where we did inverse sine, inverse cosine, and inverse tangent. And then if we're solving for one side, this is where we're going to use the Pythagorean Theorem. Okay. Now, it doesn't really matter what you solve for first. So we can solve for angle A, we can solve for angle C first, or we can solve for BC. It is really up to you what you would like to solve for first. I think I'm going to solve for the side first, and then we'll solve for the angles. So we're going to go ahead and do our BC. So before we do that, we need to identify, well, what are basically our legs and what is our hypotenuse? So notice the hypotenuse is always across from the 90 degree, which is going to be our 43. So I'm going to write that's a hypotenuse. That means 21 and our BC are going to be the legs. So that's going to represent our A and our B values. Okay, so here, trying to find our values, I'm going to make BC as X, so I know I need to solve for that side. So we have 21 squared plus X squared equals our hypotenuse. So remember, C is always our hypotenuse, it's the largest side. So now we plug this into our calculator, so we're going to do 21 squared, so that's 441, plus X squared equals 43 squared, which is 1849. Now we're going to subtract 441 from both sides. So I get X squared equals 1408, and I'm going to take the square root. Now, when we're doing this, we are going to get decimals. It is possible. So we're not going to leave our final answer as a square root. We're going to get decimals if we need to. So you're going to plug in square root of 1408 into your calculator. So remember to do that. We have second, and then you do the X squared, and let's put 1408 in there. So we get a decimal answer, and it looks like it's going to be 37 point. Remember, we're rounding to the tenths place, so that's one decimal place. And notice there's a 2 after the 5, so we keep it as 5. So we have 37.5. So our side of a BC, is going to be 37.5. And we don't put a degree symbol there because we are solving for side. Okay, so now let's solve for angles. Remember, it doesn't matter which one you solve for first. I'm going to go ahead and solve for A first, angle A. Okay, so since we're solving for angle A, we have to use our inverse trig ratios. And so when we're doing this, we're going to use Sohcahtoa, okay? So our measure of angle A, we have to use Sohcahtoa. Now, we can use BC if we want to, since we have already solved for that, but I'm going to use the 21 and 3, so it's just a little bit easier for me, just in case you didn't solve for BC first. Okay, so if we look at number 21, the number, and how it compares to our angle of A, notice it's right next to it. Anything right next to it is going to be adjacent. So we have A in our hypotenuse, which we already know is 43. If we look at our Sohcahtoa, we want to look for A and H. If we look here, notice A and H is with our cosine. So we're going to use cosine and the inverse of cosine to find angle A. So I'm going to write cosine of A equals, our adjacent side is going to be 21 and hypotenuse is 43. Now remember, we need to move the cosine over. In order to do so, it becomes the inverse. We keep A where it's at. So now I have inverse cosine of 21 over 43. Plug that into your calculator. Now remember, to do that, we press the second button, and then we're going to press cosine. That gives us the inverse. I'm going to do 21 divided by 43. Close your parentheses. And we get 60 point. Remember, we're rounding to the tens. Notice there is a 6 after the 7, so we need to round up to 8. So we have 60.8. And that is going to be degrees since that is an angle measurement. Okay. Now, here you actually have two different ways of solving for angle C. Because now we have two angles out of the three, we could actually add up the 90 degrees plus the 60.8. Once we've done that, do 180 minus that value to give us C. Or we could also still, once again, do an inverse trig ratio. It is up to you. So there are many ways of trying to solve these type of problems, okay? So just be careful on which way you're doing them. I'm going to go ahead and do another inverse trig ratio so we can practice more of those. Okay, so I'm going to do angle C. Okay. And once again, I'm going to do that 21 and the 43, okay? So 21 in comparison to my angle C, that is actually going to be opposite because it goes across the triangle. And of course, 43 is just going to be the hypotenuse. That stays like that. That doesn't change. So I need to figure out for my measure of angle C, we're going to use Sohcahtoa. Okay. So if I have opposite over hypotenuse, what is that going to be? Well, our O and our H is going to represent sine. So that's what we're finding here. So we're going to have sine of angle C equals, and so our opposite was 21, hypotenuse was 43. Now remember, I need to move that sine over. So when I do, it becomes the inverse sine. Okay, so I have 21. Oops, don't forget your -1 there, or you will not get the right answer. There we go. 21 of 43. Now we're going to plug that. So make sure you have this like -1 because that really represents the inverse. Okay, so I have, make sure you do second sine of 21 divided by 43. And then we press enter. And then we're going to have 29 point. And then notice there's a 3 after the 2, so we keep that. So 29.2 as our answer. And don't forget the degree sign. Okay. Now I'm going to also show you the other way we could have done this with subtracting. And let's see if we get the same answer. So yes, we used inverse trig ratios, but because we solved for angle A and we know 90 degrees, we also could have subtracted from 180. So let's see if we could get that. So measure of angle C, we could have done 180 minus. For angle A, we got 60.8. So I'm going to have my 60.8 plus 90. So remember, that was the measure of angle A. Okay. And so when I do this, I have 180 minus, just plug 60.8 and 90 in your calculator. So 60.8 plus 90 gives us 150.8. Then we do the subtraction, and we get 29.2. Isn't that what we got earlier? Yes. So with this measure of angle C, you have multiple ways of solving. And that's going to be kind of true once you kind of get some of these sides or angles down. You might have multiple ways of solving. Okay, make sure if you have any further questions that you contact me. And make sure you work on that homework assignment. I'll see you guys later.